NordVPN is becoming more than just a VPN. Threat protection will guard your device against malicious websites, malware, trackers, and intrusive ads, even if you're not connected to a VPN server at the time. Step up your cybersecurity and stay safe.
Meet NordPass. It creates strong passwords for you, keeps them safely locked in a single place, and automatically logs you into all of your favorite online accounts. And you can access it all on all of your devices, even when you're offline. That's NordPass.
Hey, David, thank you so much for making yourself available. For everybody who's watching, and this is the first time you're watching my channel, please subscribe, bit.ly Crypto Rich Odyssey. And this is David Morgan, the Silver Investor. We're going to be finding out what's happening in the gold and silver markets. And we're going to do 2 videos. And the second video is not going to be on YouTube because it's far too controversial for YouTube. And YouTube's a little bit sensitive and touchy. And we don't want to hurt YouTube's feelings. So Crypto Rich Odyssey, follow me on Twitter. And join my official Telegram announcements channel. And you, David, you are the original silver guru, silver investor. Do you just want to say a little bit about yourself?
Oh, tiny bit. I mean, I've been fascinated with money from an early age. And when I discovered fractional reserve banking and what it really meant and what happens to paper monies and they always fail, it kind of pushed me into the sound or honest money movement. And I changed the website from silver-investor.com to the Morgan Report. Years ago, I rebranded the Morgan Report because although I'm a gold bug, silver bug, honest money advocate, I look at the entire resource sector primarily through the equity side. And we're the first on rare earth elements. We were writing about rare earth elements before people ever heard the word. We were on cobalt. We were on lithium. We were on a lot of these important minerals. And so we covered the gamut. So by rebranding the Morgan Report, obviously, you're going to get commentary on the precious metals, but you're also going to get insights into the resource sector. And sometimes we're the leader in it. So that's why I rebranded.
Great. Oh, well, thank you. And I know you because I've been listening to you for 11, 12 years when I started getting interested in money and I came across Silver Guru and Silver Investors. So that's stuck in my brain. That's hardwired. But yes,
it'll never go away.
It'll never go away. That's right. You are shiny like silver forever, embedded in my neurons, right? And the morganreport.com, do you want to say what the service that you provide to people?
Well, I do a free service, and I do a lot of interviews like this, and usually 3 a week. I post them on the blog. So if you go to themorganreport.com, just get to the blog tab and have at it. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, or our Twitter feed, or our LinkedIn presence. They're all available. And then I have a premium service, and these are people that really want to dig deep and get what we think about not only the big picture analysis, timing on gold and silver, and primarily opportunities in the resource sector from top tier, mid tier to speculative opportunities. And that's for people that really invest. So the premium service is a paid service, but it's probably 1 out of, 150 people that are on the premium service versus what's on the free service, which is, in the thousands. And that's fine. I'm happy to provide a public service for everyone. But again, if you want to get down to the nitty gritty, we actually have 2 services, the premium and the mastermind. The mastermind is more for accredited investors or fund managers, that type of thing. We bring to the fore different opportunities that are restricted for AIs and things along those lines. These are for people that are really dedicated or manage money.
Right. Okay. Now, not only have you been dealing with this and delving in this area for many, many years, people are paying you, fund managers and big players are paying you for your service. So you have some expertise in this. You've done at least your 10,000 hours, I reckon, with shiny silver and gold and, like you said, the rare earth metals. Okay. Now, I asked you one because I just wanted to get commentary from you about what's happening in the gold and silver markets and also what's happening, how that's intersecting with the financial markets. There's a particular guy that I follow, Rafi Faber, and I've had him on my channel. And one of the things that he's saying, looking at what's happening in the COMEX and the LBMA, is how gold and silver stocks are falling. There is less and less physical. So do you want to start with that and then take it wherever you want to go?
Well, certainly. Well, I'll shout out to Rafi. I really think he's one of the top guys currently in this space. And of course, that's opinion, but it's my opinion, and I'm happy to say it. Yes, he's right. The offtake of silver and gold from the known outlets, the COMEX and the LBMA, have been substantial. And usually that's the money of last resort. In other words, most of the players that need physical, especially in commercial form, like silver, commercial bars, take it directly from a refinery or sometimes directly from the mine. Samsung gets their silver directly from the Vino, as an example. So to go to the COMEX or the LBMA is something where really it's, again, the last place you want to take it because it shows your hand. It's kind of like having that 5-card poker game where you've got 4 cards up, but you get to take a peek at the whole card. Maybe a corny analogy, but you get my point. So if you are seeing silver being drained off of the LBMA and the COMEX at the same time, now sometimes they'll swap back and forth. So you might see the COMEX drained. Oh, look at the COMEX, it's going down, but they fail to check the LBMA and say, oh, it's risen. But when they're both going down together, that portends less supply. And I think that's very accurate because we're seeing more and more physical demand in both the metals, but yet the commentators, the mainstream commentators, have very little to say about it. As usual, they ignore it. And if they have much to say about it, it's usually derogatory.
Right. Okay. Now, isn't there a thing that we can cash settlement? So, if somebody wants delivery, that in the agreement that they made with the supplier, with the LBMA or the COMEX, they can say, no, sorry, cash settlement. So then how can it get drained?
It could get drained as long as people stand for delivery and the exchange is willing to settle it. But as you said, and this is a point that needs to be made over and over again, if the exchange says we're not settling in metal and sends you a check, there's not a darn thing you can do about it because it's part of the contract. Let me go a step further. Not a lot. I want to be very straight up on this. There haven't been tons and tons of, but there's been several over the years of people that have my direct contact points or go through the website and said, hey, I stood for delivery on my 2 contracts of silver and all I got was a check. Well, that's just the little guy. That's someone with pretty good means. I mean, if you've got 10,000 ounces of silver and you can buy it at $20 an ounce, we're talking a pretty fat check, right? But they have it, they want it, and yet the exchange says, no way, Jose. So how much of that goes on, I do not know. I have, empirical evidence, but it's not like I get thousands of these every delivery month. I don't. I get a few here and there. But still the point is made that they do settle in cash in some instances. So in that particular month, for an example, let's say that the powers that be on the COMEX decided that this bank, that bank, and this hedge fund they'll deliver to, but everybody that has less than 50 contracts, we'll just send them a check because these are the little guys and they're not going to make a big fuss. And if they do make a fuss, we'll just remind them that we have the power, they don't. They sign a contract that says we can send them a check, and that's what we did. So when that comes to the fore, when it's a big bank or a hedge fund or a pension fund or somebody that's very notable, like let's say a Warren Buffett, and they fail to deliver the silver and only provide a check, that's sort of the end game. That sort of lets the whole world know that something's wrong. But until that point comes, they can play at the margin as long as the big players get it and don't complain, they're okay. The problem with the futures market, not just the silver market, is that 99% really never get settled for anything but cash. It's a zero-sum game. For every winner, there's a loser. And most people are just willing to take a check. Even when you stand for delivery, I know I'm kind of drilling down far, but even when you stand for delivery, and I've done it a few times, you can get your broker will call you and try to talk you out of it. It's like, well, why do you want it? The bars are ugly, or they're big, or they're heavy, or it costs you. You're going to have to pay for insurance and transportation. You know that, don't you? They'll just do almost everything possible to persuade you to just take a frickin' check. Don't take the silver itself. And that's true in the grain markets and other markets as well. But as we all know, it's a commodities market. And the commodities market should be about the commodities. In a way, they are, but when you really analyze it from a financial perspective, all it is a big gambling casino with a tilted table.
Right. Yes, that's on the one hand, but then there's the very real use case for gold and silver as money and silver as an industrial commodity. Okay, so then the question is when? When
Yeah,
you're
that
gonna
is
have
the, yeah. I would say it's now, meaning that with the dollar hitting like new highs, the stock market hitting new highs, the bond market finally peaked in January of this year. Since gold is the opposite of the stock market, kind of the opposite of the US dollar, if you see those things making new highs, I mean, if you think about it in a very rudimentary manner, then gold should be making new lows. And
Mm.
it's not. So it's actually hanging in there pretty well. I just did a lecture for another group, and it's titled "What's Wrong with Gold?" And in that presentation, I basically said nothing's wrong with gold. Gold is doing its job. It could be doing a better job, but it's doing its job. It's had a CAGR, a compounded annual growth rate of about 10% for the last 22 years. It's outperformed the S&P 500 during that time frame, and it's outperformed the bond market. It's just that if you look, it depends where you put the starting line. If you put the starting line 10 years ago and bought at the peak in 2011, and you're down now, and that's been 10 years, you're pretty, you're upset. Well, gold isn't doing anything for me. And in that time frame, it hasn't. I admit that. But from the longer term, especially doing as well as it has under the conditions I just named, and what I see in the future, and you have to make up your own mind, that inflation is not going away, depreciation of the currency isn't going away, faith in governments is going to continue to deteriorate around the planet, and we are looking at interesting times ahead. So to hedge that on a financial basis, you need to have precious metals. To hedge it on a daily living basis, you need extra food, water, shelter, a cushion in your local currency, that type of thing, and good community. But on a financial basis, the best place to be under these conditions is to have some, not all, wealth preserved in precious metals, because history's taught that it preserves your wealth.
Yes, yes. And you said gold is the anti-dollar, because if the dollar rises, you'd expect the gold to fall as money because they're traded against each other. But gold has stayed steady,
Pretty
risen
much.
a little bit, and
Yeah.
while the dollar's risen much, much more. But my understanding is gold has risen pretty much against every other currency in the world. And that's, I think, because of all the crazy money printing and also the drain of capital from Europe into the dollar, into the US. Okay.
Correct.
Now you
Yeah,
said,
and I'll just add on. I mean, you made a great point. I'll just emphasize it. If you look at gold in any currency but the U.S., it's doing really well. In a lot of currencies, it's making new highs.
yeah,
And the reason for that is gold is being measured against what that particular nation state is printing at. In other words, the reason the dollar is strong, there's two reasons the dollar is strong. There's several, but the two main ones are, one, they're not printing as fast and as recklessly as a lot of other nation states. And two, it's the reserve currency, so there's more faith in the dollar than most of these others. But regardless, it's still a piece of paper that's only backed by your faith in it, your confidence in it.
yep, yep. And it's still the petrodollar, still good, still the main currency for purchasing oil, and also the main currency for paying off loans and debts and bonds and stuff by nations and other big players. So there's still a demand for it. And then you look at the alternatives, the pound and the euro and the yen and the Swiss franc, they're not doing so well relative to the dollar. But the ruble is, and one of the things I noted was, I think a few weeks into the Ukraine-Russian war, where Russia pegged the ruble to gold. And I was like, oh,
Yeah, not really. I mean, that was a bit of a misnomer. What they basically said was, we will buy domestic gold at this set price. That was the peg. And they also said on that article, people seem to not read the whole thing, was it was a temporary basis. And I think it only lasted a month or less. But still, they made the point. And to me, it was more of a trial balloon to see, one, what the domestic miners were willing to do, two, to stabilize the ruble, and three, to test the market, see what shows like yours would do and others, and what the feedback mechanism would be for, let's say, the financial markets. How would they perceive that? And I think it was actually a pretty interesting play by by Russia to do that, to measure what the outlook for gold might be and what the potential future could look like if they really did peg the ruble to gold.
Right. And we're going to the future, which who knows, they may do.
Yeah.
Because there's the Shanghai Physical Exchange. I understand there's a refinery being developed in Saudi Arabia. I hear noise about Saudi Arabia joining the BRICS, and also Saudi Arabia and Russia. And was it President Xi is going to be visiting China this week or next week? So more and more ties as Saudi Arabia kind of like moves away from the ambit of the US.
Let me stop you there. I want to add something that I've only done once or twice. But if you go back in the history, and it's my history, and a person's life is a blip relative to the human experience. But nonetheless, the whole petrodollar thing was because the Saudis didn't trust the dollar. The Saudis were basically saying, we want to be paid in gold. And very few people bring this up.
Mm.
So what happened was Kissinger went over and had this great little talk and basically did what basically the mob does. So look, we're going to offer protection money. You take our dollars and we will protect you. And you can only take dollars for settlement in oil. And they bought into that. And when they bought into that, that removed the gold from the equation. So they're settling in dollars, not in gold. On top of that, what it really did was they had all this excess dollars. So what do you do with it? Well, what they did with them is they turned them into long-term debt. So the Saudis were buying the 30-year bond, basically, the 10-year note, the bonds, over and over and over again, and just stockpiled cash in a vast amount. Now, let's do a thought experiment and say that Kissinger goes over there and the Saudi says, no, we want gold and we'll protect ourselves, or Russia's going to protect us like they now do, since that whole thing has changed now. And they continued down that gold road. We wouldn't be having this talk right now because gold would have found its equilibrium point and would be probably re-put into the monetary system. But of course, that didn't happen. We got on the petrodollar. That's ending. The U.S. is basically brushed aside. Russia's come in as the protector. More and more oil settlements are outside of the U.S. dollar, but still a lot is done in the U.S. dollar. But we're seeing that whole system break apart. And we're also seeing gold, again, hang in there, but it's got some bright days ahead, I'm certain of it.
Yeah, no, I think so too. I agree with you that it's got some bright days ahead because one, it's never gone to zero. But one of the things, David, that I realized a few weeks ago, and forgive me for being so slow about this, right, is that the entire financial system, everything is underpinned by gold. Silver, Bitcoin, dollar, pound, yen, everything is underpinned by gold. And I don't think people get that.
Yeah, I think Rafi Farber makes a great point. I mean, he's talked about that. Probably does a better job than I can, but basically his argument is something along these lines. I hate speaking for anyone else because that's not what I said. But the idea is that there's still some convertibility. I mean, you can still take, a bunch of currency, name it. It can be outside of the U.S. It could be a peso, a ruble. It can be anything, and you can exchange that in most jurisdictions for gold. So there's some tie to gold with the currency that exists now. And basically, until that is cut totally, you're not going to see it. Now, will it be cut totally remains to be determined, but there will be a point where people just give up on their faith in the currency.
Yeah.
And when it happens, the run to gold will happen in such a huge way that there will probably not be the ability to satisfy the demand for gold versus the amount of currency pouring into it without the price moving substantially higher.
Yep, absolutely. And I think there's a pitfall for you and I, you in the US, me in the UK, that thinking that how in the Western world, how gold is regarded, apart from possibly Germany and Austria, is how it's regarded in the rest of the world. It's not the case. In South America, in Africa, in the Middle East, India, China, Russia, people they'll settle for gold. We will take gold. No
Right.
problem at all, right? I'll take that barbarous relic, right? And Zimbabwe had just released a gold coin, and they're saying it's going well. They're going to issue smaller denominations, I understand. And then also there's this big find in Uganda of a big gold? Do you want to comment?
The Uganda thing I kind of dismiss. I'm not saying they haven't found it. I think they've exaggerated what they found, but I don't have the facts, and anyone I know and trust in the industry does not, you know, concurs with me. In other words, we don't really have the facts, so we can't really make a determination. But I think the other points you make are extremely important. And as you started laughing, it brought me back to the movie John Wick. And when he has the cleanup service come in, he always pays in gold coin, right?
I
I don't know if you've seen the movie or not.
I haven't seen the film. But yeah, and I say this to my friends when I'm explaining to them: is listen, I'll take your gold sovereign, no problem at all.
Yeah.
I'll give you I'll give you £10 for it if you want.
Yeah.
It's got a face value of £1. I'll give you £10, no problem. Okay, now you said about. By the way, I just want to make another shout out to Ruffy, because he did say this to me because he's been on my channel twice and I've been in his channel once. He did say to me about gold being the ultimate foundation. So Ruffy, if you are watching this, I have finally got it. I finally got it. Gold is the ultimate form of money. Thank you so much, Ruffy. Okay, you said about the future, what you see rolling out in the future, and like near term, medium term. Do you want to comment on that?
Sure, I see more hardship and more, rapid change. I mean, with the foodstuffs, the food supply chain breakdown, further tensions throughout the nation states, with China going into Taiwan potentially, the Ukraine situation, the oil problems, Germany needing fuel from Russia. I mean, all these things interact, and basically connecting the dots, because they do interplay with each other. We're going to see more and more stress throughout the system, globally, financially, and commodity-wise. So, again, the agricultural commodities are under stress. You'll see higher prices, generally speaking. Water isn't talked about. You're seeing stress there. Fuel is talked about, natural gas particularly, more stress there. So these are things that cause people to, at certain times, take to the streets. I mean, if they can't afford bread, they will make some noise about it. I mean, basically, that's what the Arab Spring was all about. It wasn't about, some video or whatever the politicians told us. It was about not being able to afford food. And we're going to see that more and more. It's unfortunate. So we're going through birth pangs in a way on a global basis, because things are changing rapidly and most people aren't prepared for them. And people don't like change. They really have that normalcy bias. They want tomorrow to be just like it was today, and they expect it to be so. And when it is not, it upsets the apple cart, and that's what we're witnessing.
Yep. And then how do you see that affecting gold and silver?
Well, eventually it'll take them much higher, because as faith is lost throughout the world on whatever government you want to name, people start to look after themselves more and more. And the way to do that is to find a monetary asset that doesn't have a government involved. And that's obviously the metals themselves. And there are other things. I mean, there's crypto that's out there, and there's some that, I would say are favorable, that I'm favorable to, some that aren't. But, I'm a free market guy. I mean, you've got a certain one you like, and a lot of in the crypto world, I mean, we study it, but not as hard as I do the macro picture or the metals or the resource sector. I don't have time to deep dive in everything. I do have a staff. We do write about the blockchain every month. My point being is there might be 10 cryptos out there that are really, really valuable that I don't even know their names. I don't consider myself a crypto expert. I do consider myself a big picture thinker, and I can look at the sector and make some, forecast on the sector itself, like more regulation throughout the sector. But I certainly wouldn't dismiss crypto as a whole, not at all. Again, there's probably some real opportunities out there. I just don't know what they are for the most part. I mean, I have a few of my favorites that I have looked into, but what are there? 10,000 of them or something? There's a lot out.
and more being born every moment. Who knows, right? Who knows? Okay. All right. Anything else you want to let us know about gold and silver and money?
I think there's one thing, and we've talked about it before. I'll just close out with this. If you haven't watched it, I consider that the Four Horsemen film, it's not the film The Four Horsemen, that's an old film. It's called The Four Horsemen Film. It's on YouTube for free. It's an hour and a half long, and it goes through the age of empire and how this empire is coming to an end. And what's so cool about the movie, in my opinion, is that it shows you this is a cyclical thing. That there's the age of the pioneer, and I forget all the ages. There's like 4 ages, and you have really robust people that are out there, blazing a trail, so to speak, and they don't have a lot, but they're making their way, and then it gets in, and you get to the end where there's basically decadence. There's too much of it, and we were, in the everything bubble. It was too much stuff. Now we're seeing the end of that, where there isn't too much food, and there isn't too much oil, and there isn't too much gold. We're coming to that shift, and the movie explains that very well. Plus, it gives some solutions at the end. So, I'd encourage your viewers to look at the Four Horsemen film on a weekend, or when they want to be entertained. Again, it's free on YouTube.
Okay, now thank you for that, and I shall link to that. The Four Horsemen film on YouTube. I'll link to that. I'll see if I can find it on Odyssey or BitChute and link to that version instead, or Rumble. So I did a video recently about how corrupt money corrupts. Now, listen, you're a financial expert. I'm a social worker, right? So this may be new to me, and I've been thinking about this, but there is and what I argue in this video, and I just love your comment on this, and I posted it a few days ago, is that where you have a fractional reserve banking system, you have the Cantillon effect favoring those that are nearest the source of the money. Now that happens with Bitcoin mining and gold mining and silver mining. You have a Cantillon effect. But with a fiat system, it's so exaggerated because they can just push a button and produce loads and loads and loads of dollars, and then use that to buy favors and preserve the structures as they currently are for themselves. And so then what happens is they will then use that money to bribe and capture the fools, fakes, and frauds that are running our country, because they're the ones. The only way that Lynn Truss or Rishi Sunak are ever going to get into power, really, is if somebody paves the way for them through bribes and corruption. Because it's not like they're political titans. Kamala Harris is not a political titan. She's not a JFK or a Martin Luther King or a Nelson Mandela. Margaret Thatcher. They can do it on the strength of their own merits. They can rise. So in a way, they can't be bought. They don't need to be bought because they'll rise to power on the strength of their merit. But Macron, Trudeau, give me a break. Joe Biden, really? Really? Leader of the free world on his own merit? Anyway, those are just my thoughts. Anything you want to say about that before we finish?
No, I won't add on to it. I think you outlined it perfectly. I mean, and this again goes back to that movie, that as the empire ends, the political class is so greedy that all they're doing is tilting the table even more. So everything comes into their hands, and there's nothing left for the rest of the population. And of course, the outcome of that, depending on what era we're talking about, I mean, sometimes these people lose their heads, literally. I'm not saying that's good. What I am saying is we are in for some real change politically in the years ahead.
Yes, yes. But at least we'll be happy. We'll own
right.
We'll be happy, apparently. Other people, the rulers, they'll be even happier.
They'll be happy.
Because they'll have everything. David, thank you so much. I look forward to speaking to you again, because we're going to be digging into silver and rare metals and climate change and renewable energy. I'll have the links to morganreport.com in the description below, and his channel. Please go check him out. If you have any comments or questions, put them in the description below. And between now and when I see you next, please keep filling your pockets with precious metal profits. This is Crypto Rich and the Silver Guru signing out. All the best. Bye-bye.